This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. How's everybody doing today? Happy Wednesday. Let's talk a little silver gold bull, shall we? Number of ounces of silver needed to buy an ounce of gold now at near 30-year highs. Silver is a bargain price when compared to gold. It's a perfect time to protect a portion of your savings with silver. And at Silver Gold Bull, they have a wide variety of best value silver for every budget. Simply text or email Grahame for details. And whether you're a seasoned investor or new to precious metals, Grahame will work with you to answer all your questions and recommend the best products to meet your investing goals. All you got to do is down the show notes. You can contact Grahame, or you can go to silvergoldbull.ca or .com. You can make all your purchases there. Shows up nice and easy on your doorstep. And just make sure to reference the Shaun Newman Podcast. Bow Valley Credit Union is your Alberta-regulated, fully serviced financial institution and is proud to present the first in Canada gold collateral lending. Now all of you can lend against your physical gold and silver for favorable rates. It's like a HELOC on your gold and silver. And if you don't have any physical gold or silver, they can help you get a loan to purchase that as well. Shoot an email down to welcome@bowvalleycu.com. Say hello to Leanna. She'll get your BVCU membership started today, and that's all down in the show notes as well. Caleb Taves, Renegade Acres. When it comes to concrete, these are the men I would recommend. They did the stamp concrete in the new studio, and let me tell you, it is beautiful. I've been thoroughly impressed, and anyone who's come out and taken a look at it has been like, holy man, that is something. And that is Caleb Taves and Renegade Acres if you're looking for some concrete work done. The Substack, free to subscribe to. We get the week in review on Sundays, and then there's some paid content as well. The Cornerstone Forum in its entirety you can get once you're behind the paywall. 2025 and the 2024 Cornerstone Forums, both there, as well as every week try and give you a little bit of bonus content from, a little bit of in the studio to some things going on in life on this side. So if you want to support the podcast, you can do that as well. The new studio is coming here in 2025, and a shout out to Kevin for pushing me on it to remind people, you can be an individual, you can also be a business and get on the legacy wall. Many ways to do that: skills, labor, materials, money. Cam Grabowski and Jim Henderson, for instance, came out and we cut down some trees that were, shall we say, a little dangerous. I'm happy they're gone after that big windstorm went through. There's a whole bunch of trees that are fallen since. And they just came out and worked away an afternoon, and a ton of time for people that just want to find a way to help do what I'm doing on this end. But there's also others: Leaf and Becky Anderson, Dexter Nelson, Earl Wally, Seth Bloom, Ben Trudeau, Scott and Alana Roatin, Nancy Fleming, Don Valiant, Morley Muldoon, Grant Milner, Tom Eichert, Kevin Damon, Ralph Damon, Louis Stang, Scott Petrie, Kirby Cohen, Dallas Simmer, Robert Villeneuve, Warawa is another one. So there's a whole bunch of people that have found ways to get involved in the podcast studio. And if you want to be that person and get your name on before it's too late, shoot me a text. Would love to have you a part of that. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. And make sure to share with a friend. Folks, let's get on to that tale of the tape. Today's guest is a Canadian politician and member of the United Conservative Party. He was elected as the MLA for Calgary-Lougheed in the 2023 Alberta general election. I'm talking about Eric Bouchard. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Shaun Newman Podcast. Today I'm sitting with Eric Bouchard. Sir, thanks for hopping on.
Thanks for having me, Shaun. Yeah, anytime. Appreciate it.
Well, I was just saying to you before we started, like, you've hopped on a couple times, but it's been pretty quick little spots, and for the audience, they probably know a little bit about you, Eric, but in fairness, I wouldn't mind just getting a little bit of your backstory. What drew you into politics? And I don't know, just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the courage to listen and a few other things going on in Alberta politics.
Perfect. No, thanks. I appreciate it. My name's Eric Bouchard. I'm the MLA for Calgary-Lougheed. I was elected just over 2 years ago, May 29th. Prior to that, had a business downtown Calgary. We started in 2004, my wife and I. My wife, Roxanne, we've been married for 26 years. We've got 4 kids, 25, 23, 18, and 16 years old, 2 boys, 2 girls. And was always interested in politics, but never, other than voting and being interested, reading lots about the political scene, was never involved directly until it really mattered to me. And we were forced to close our business in 2020 due to government mandates, and then we had a business, and we just opened up a brand new business in January 2020 in the downtown core of Calgary. We had 10 weeks where business was great until forced to close. Specifically with our business being in the downtown core, when we were allowed to reopen, there was no one in the core. Everyone was working from home. So, a couple years of ups and downs and hanging on, hoping for things to turn around, which they never really did. And, much of the downtown Calgary, particularly the West End where we were located, is still really quiet. So we didn't have the opportunity to bounce back. So I was extremely frustrated, went through some really low times. And I reached out to some other business owners that, not really knowing exactly what I was looking for, but we became our own self-help group, I guess, and trying to make sense of a world that didn't make sense anymore. And got involved. We got together 1 week. There was 7 of us. The following week, there was 16. And that's a group that has evolved and grown into much more. And they, about 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, I guess, they asked if I'd consider running, and in Jason Kenney's vacant seat, which is, I'm sitting in his old office down in Calgary-Lougheed right now. And my first reaction was, it was F no, or hard no. And then I said, I'm not a politician. I appreciate the ask, but that's not for me. And they said, well, that's exactly why you should. And so I talked with my wife, talked with my kids. This was a couple weeks before Christmas, so I said, I'll get back to you guys at the end of the Christmas holidays. And I was firmly expecting my wife and kids to say, that's ridiculous, Dad. That's the dumbest thing ever. And they all supported me. So knowing that they had my back, I decided to put my name forward. I ran in the nomination for the UCP in Calgary-Lougheed, kicked off our campaign in early January. There was 5 of us running, hard-fought nomination process, but I had the time and ability to door knock pretty much every home in Calgary-Lougheed and made lots of connections, sold some memberships, won the nomination, I think March 13th, and then a few months later, won the UCP seat in Calgary-Lougheed. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
One of the things I really respect about your story is that, I've been asked from time to time. I don't think I'd make a great politician whatsoever, but I've been asked, are you ever going to run in politics? And my answer has always been, the day my wife says you need to run in politics is the day I'll think about it. Because until that point, with young family and everything else, I think it's more detrimental to be away from one's family and everything else. And the fact that your story leads to your family being being very supportive of it, I think that's well, I respect that, because if you'd done it a different way, you just don't know what the outcomes are of family, and that's really, really important, at least on this side of things, and I would argue for a lot more people.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, if it wasn't for my family's support and they, the years leading up to, I think it'd be a different story if I went from the business world, from having my business to jumping into politics without that gap of 2+ years of trying to figure out our life in this new world. And they witnessed the ups and the more so the downs of those 2 years. And I think that certainly emboldened me, and I think my family as well. And there's still times where they're a little weirded out because they'll see their dad's name in the paper or on TV, and particularly my youngest, who's just finishing up grade 11. When they talk politics, my name comes up every once in a while. But no, I couldn't have done it with them, and they're my biggest champions, and it's been an amazing process.
Well, and in fairness to you, you didn't get into politics and sit idly by, I would argue, with the when I first got asked to come down and host your first Injection of Truth, the thing that drew me to it was the fact that it was government putting it on, right? There's lots of town halls that have happened all across Alberta. I don't need to tell the audience that. Half the audience is the ones putting it on. But the thing about Calgary-Lougheed is they have been a place where they've pushed the conversation forward, which I really respect. And you did the first two Injection of Truths, and I assume when you started, that wasn't the plan, but that you've certainly taken the lead on it for the Alberta government, because maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's other constituencies doing the same thing. But yours certainly is the ones I've heard about. Is there others doing what you've done? And then how has that been, being the constituency doing that, the MLA being at the forefront of it?
I think there are other constituency associations and other MLAs who are interested and involved and very supportive. But I think similar to myself, so when I won the nomination, the entire constituency board of Calgary-Lougheed resigned the following day. And at first I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? Like, here I am, this neophyte in the political world, not really understanding anything. And then now all of a sudden I don't have a board. But that turns out, I think that was probably one of the best things, because we put together a board, and the board is motivated. We don't know what we don't know, so we're going to continue on. And we've had our ups and downs, and some pushback from different people, and but I think what we're always looking to, and we have a saying in Calgary-Lougheed that we win conversations, or we win people over one conversation at a time, and that's how I approached my business background, how through door knocking, through meeting people, and our constituency association is no different. We're seeking truth, we're seeking dialogue. We don't always have the answers. We're always going to, if we don't have the answers though, we're going to ask questions. And unfortunately, sometimes it means going into the corners and having difficult conversations, or trying to have a conversation when we don't understand something.
When you say your entire board resigns, they resign because you were elected. I assume specifically you were elected. So what you stood for, they just disagreed so much with, they were like, I'm not doing this. And it wasn't one person, it was the entire board?
It was the entire board, and I didn't want to go into it. I didn't want to ask those questions because I was trying to figure out my role, even just as the UCP candidate now. And so I didn't ask the questions as to why. There was just an email, and there weren't too many people left on the board. So it wasn't, I think the maximum you're allowed to have is 30 board members, but they certainly didn't have a full board. But I was, the president of the board sent an email saying that, we resign. So I didn't want to delve any further into it, because I just wanted to move forward.
In the NHL or in hockey, when a new GM gets appointed, right, they usually clean house, and they cleaned house for you. So you got to, on the positive side of it, you got to have people come in that I assume believe in Eric Bouchard and believe in maybe changing the direction of the way Calgary-Lougheed maybe was operating, or maybe a little larger scope, the way Alberta was operating. Sure.
And I at the time didn't really, I was trying not to dwell on the personal side. And, I think it's for sure been an incredible, they gifted us an incredible opportunity to put together this team of, our board is fantastic. From our leadership, from, Daryl Comic, our president, our our CFO David Coots and Trina Erman, who does everything behind the scenes, and she keeps the trains rolling in on time. And then our other 27 board members. It's a powerful board, and it's fun to move. Not always in lockstep, but we come to consensus, and we move forward together. And that's, I think, one of the beauties is that none of us really knew the intricacies of how politics really worked. So we're figuring it out as we go and continue to ask questions, and we're going to misstep every once in a while. But no, it's I'm glad we all share, seeking truth and having dialogue with people.
Well, you have another event coming up. I brought up I think the Courage to Listen coming up here June 25th in Calgary-Lougheed again. And I guess before we get into the event, what was the conversation on your side like to have another event? I've been fortunate enough to MC both the first two and see some of the speakers you've been able to bring in. And my hat's off to your entire group, because they have been nothing short of exceptional. Although I think we can all agree, as soon as you're bringing in some of those names, it's like, well, you're about to go through a media cycle of being slammed as, talking to, I could stick a bunch of words there, but just the tinfoil hat crew, unless you come and sit and listen to what they're talking about. And then you're like, holy man, this is something. What like after the first two, did it help like kind of like toughen you up of like, no, we're going to keep doing this? And then what was the thought process leading into this Courage to Listen, idea around, and I'm going to pull it up here, the building a framework for a sovereign Alberta? Obviously that's been all the conversation from the election, but maybe just the first two, and what did that, did it build the character of the group to keep pushing forward? And what was the thought process on this June 25th event coming up?
Well, no simple thought process other than Daryl and I having a cold one together and just having just discussing future town halls. And there was no great plan for it, but it kind of came together about 3.5-4 months ago. The popularity and success and information of the Injection of Truth town halls, kind of has led us to, okay, well, let's explore some other things. What do we want to talk about? And we brought up quite a few different ideas, and this was one we discussed it even months before the federal election, and then obviously the federal election came to be, and just from myself, the day after the federal election, talking to small business owners in my constituency, there's certainly a lot of people who are looking for exploring. No one really knows what the answers are going to be. So we decided, well, let's, and this is months before the election as well. Like let's pose some questions and let's bring some people in who may have answers, and with completely different views. And I reached out, one of the groups that I had been talking to as of a couple months ago was the Monarchist League of Canada. And I spoke with one gentleman there, and he was very interested. And then over the last month, pretty much since the federal election, he has ghosted me, essentially. Hasn't responded to emails or voicemails that I've left him, because we did want to present, and we still do. So if you know anyone who wants to speak from a monarchist side or from a federalist side, like we're open. We want the best people to communicate their ideas, because at the end of the day, I don't know the answers. I don't know the pathway forward for Albertans, what it looks like, but I know from an economics perspective, like status quo hasn't worked, and it wasn't working in the past. And this new liberal government sure are saying some of the right things, but until we see a concrete action, it's a lot of the same people.
Yeah, well, yes, it's a lot of the same people, and actions speak a heck of a lot louder than words at this point. And certainly knowing the years that you're talking about, and the subsequent years after that, there's been a lot of attack on Alberta specifically, the West. And so this conversation, there's a reason why, the Alberta Prosperity Project continues to fill town halls everywhere across Alberta, right? Like, I mean, people are hungry to find out if there's a better way forward. And one of the things about, I'll rattle off, you got Brian Jean coming, Minister of Energy and Minerals. You got Ben Trudeau, Matthew Eric, Chris Sims, Bruce Party, Dr. Michael Wagner, Peter McCaffrey, and Mitch Sylvester. And to the audience here, that none of those are shockers. They've all been on the show at some point, some more than others. Brian hasn't been on since he ran for the UCP leadership, but I assume that is going to be one heck of a night with some people who are a man who's in government, the CEO of probably the loudest voice in the independence movement, and then everything in between. Bruce Party, coming out from Ontario, has been a vocal advocate, which is interesting from an Ontario perspective for Alberta leaving. What do you hope to maybe find from all these people, asking the question? What do you hope to just to get the conversation and continue it to roll, or is there something specific you're looking for?
Well, I think nothing specific, because as I mentioned, like I don't know what the answer is, and it's I'll default to the premier and let the people decide. Let Albertans decide. They know better. We're just posing questions and putting it out there. Like to be honest, I look at it from a pure economic, with my background and now as a member of the Alberta legislature. Like, let's look at the economics. Equalization has been very one-sided for many years. Our system, Confederation, in my opinion, needs to be ratified or rejigged, whatever the terminology is. I think, more than anything, we're just putting out information there for all Albertans to yes, we're going to have disagreements, but at the end of the day, like I don't represent the rest of Canada. I represent the constituents of Calgary-Lougheed, and I was elected as a small business, with a small business background. And I've got my next meeting after this is with a couple of small business owners in the community that genuinely have concerns. We want to have, we're looking for, fairness, a fair seat at the table within Confederation.
Sorry, just it was just glitching ever so slightly on my end. You brought up the NDP before we started. How have they reacted to this conversation being held by Calgary-Lougheed?
The Nenshi Democratic Party don't really have any love for Calgary-Lougheed, unfortunately. They so much of this, like it reminds me of a few years back, when the convoy rolled out, and there's so many parallels I see. Can you imagine how things would be? What world? How different we would be? What's the best way to say this? Sorry, I'm kind of rambly here. Had Trudeau reached out and spoken to the convoy leaders and just had a conversation, let's talk about things. We can agree to disagree, but let's sit down and let's break bread. The NDP seem to want to quash any conversation. They're certainly not comfortable. They've branded us as a group of separatists, and I'm not. I grew up in Quebec. I went through the 1980 referendum, lost some of my best friends. Their families moved to Ontario, and then I was living out here in 90. I moved out here in 92. In 95, I went back to Quebec to vote in the referendum again. But no, they're not. They don't want to encourage debate or conversation, particularly around this topic once again. And, I go back to, I represent Albertans. I represent the constituents of Calgary-Lougheed. So, when my constituents have concerns, well, I'd like to bring their voice to the table.
Well, and the thing is, the polls, if you go on the high side or the low side, it isn't 10 Albertans that are talking about this. This is thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands, I might say, that are talking about this. This has been the conversation around the water cooler. It's been the conversation in the hockey dressing room. It's been the conversation around the ball field. I'm certain there's some farmers that are having it out in the field. And so if you don't talk about it, right, you don't bring in some people to discuss this, you don't know where it can go there. At least here, there's an opportunity to bring incredible voices to discuss the possibilities that lay ahead, whether that is in Canada or separated from Canada or, one of the other options out there. The conversation is the conversation of the day. Like that's one of the things that I think is timely about this, is that it is being talked about. It's being talked about an awful lot. The NDP can hide from that, or they can try and shout it down, but it was no different than when the convoy went. It was the only conversation I was having everywhere I went was, well, how are we getting out of this? And certainly I can see the resemblance to that time here in Alberta. People are talking about it, and you can shout it down all you want, but they're talking about it.
Agreed. Yeah. And it seems like that's the same playbook, and they go by, it's once again a small fringe minority, and we've seen where that ended up. These fringe minorities are not fringe minorities. They're people with genuine questions. They're people who've been, impacted for a variety of reasons. And, the results of the last federal election just seem to have alienated not just Albertans, but many Western Canadians. There's something inherently wrong with how things with the way Confederation, the way Western Canada has been treated. And if you look at how Quebec, they advocate for their people. I think there's 24 members of parliament that are known separatists, that sit in the House of Commons on a daily basis. They are elected members of parliament within in Canada, and do not want Canada. They're advocating for separatism in Quebec. And I'm not saying that's the direction Alberta would or should go, but I'm saying, like, why I represent Albertans. I represent Calgary-Lougheed. So I think we need to stand up and say enough is enough. We need to have an equal seat at the table.
When I find it interesting, there's a ton of people from Ontario that have moved to Alberta, and they're all for this conversation. They aren't coming here and going, no, we need to stay in this country, or we shouldn't try and find a better way to position Alberta to have an equal seat, to stay within Canada. They're all for it, which is interesting to me, right? It isn't like a whole group of Ontarians came here and are like, no, we want no part of this conversation. At times, they're pushing as hard as any Albertans who's been here their entire life, which should raise some eyebrows to the people that don't want to entertain the conversation.
Sure, and it's fascinating. I remember a little while ago looking at the numbers of net migration within Canada, like interprovincial migration over the years, and I think it was the 4 years of NDP government where we saw, and I think the government itself was saying, yeah, there's no jobs here. Why don't you move to BC? And since 2020, our net migration, people are moving from every other province because they want to be here, and it's. Alberta's the place to be. For me, it's given me, like I said, I moved here in 92. It's given myself and my family everything and more I could have ever asked for. And I think, we are the light. People see that and want to be part of something that's really cool, and something, moving forward. I think we have the opportunity to set some new, it's going to be a fun process.
Before I let you out, you go back to the couragetolisten.ca. That's where people can get tickets. Building a framework for sovereign Alberta is the conversation for that night. Anything you want to, trying to encourage people to attend, anything like that, Eric, that you'd want to give out to the listener on being in the building that night, or having some viewing parties, that type of thing, have been very popular if they can't make Calgary. Just some thoughts to the people for June 25th.
Yeah, well, this is going to be another great event. Our last town hall, I think, as of now, we had over 500 people in attendance, sold out room, 26,000 people viewing it online. I think it's been shared over 3.5 million times. So I would encourage anyone who's interested, who may have questions, reach out or get your tickets soon, because we're going to be selling out relatively quickly. Organize a viewing party, get together, talk, bring some friends, bring some family, bring some colleagues. This is such an important conversation for the future of Alberta, and I'm happy to be part of it.
Once again, folks, thecouragetolisten.ca is where you can go for tickets. I can toss it in the show notes so people can just scroll down. One final question for you, because to my knowledge, I think you were the only MLA in attendance at the Cornerstone Forum. What did you think of it? You were sitting up top, perched up top. I got to bump into you briefly. I'm sure I looked like I'd been hit by a train that day. But what did you think of the Cornerstone Forum? And would you encourage other MLAs to attend next year?
Absolutely, it was amazing, and I was on the floor for most of it. I was down there at the beginning, had lunch, and then had a couple calls. So when I bumped into you up top, it was just nice to stretch my legs out. But I thought it was incredible. And once again, bringing speakers in who have, whether it's economic, whether you just, you had a variety of different panels. I thought it was fantastic. I would encourage all MLAs, regardless of what team you play for, what color you wear, to show up, to engage, to speak with constituents, to speak with other Albertans, and it's it's okay to disagree. Sometimes agree to disagree, but without dialogue, without bringing people together, we're lost. And I thank you for putting that on. I'll be there next year for sure. I'd encourage all MLAs, and I'll continue to hopefully advocate and bring more people out.
Well, I tell you what, maybe what I got to do next year is I just got to invite the MLAs, right? Try and get in front of it so that they know they're welcome to be in attendance. Because there's a lot of different conversations that happen at events like that, or yours coming up, the Courage to Listen, that if you're in person and get to talk with the constituents, the different people from across Alberta, it goes a long way to see an MLA there and to have conversations one-on-one and I didn't think I did anything too extreme, but at the same time, I can just imagine the NDP looking at it from the outside and seeing some of the speakers. But to actually sit and listen and hear some different perspectives, and then to have from a voting person here in Alberta, to see you there means a lot. I'm like, oh, Eric's here. That's pretty sweet. All right. And once again, when I host an event, it's hard to have a real in-depth conversation with people just because of how busy and time-orientated those events are. But I think for others to see MLAs in attendance and know they're hearing the same conversations is really important.
Oh no, I completely agree. And if I've learned anything over the last couple of years, is that when you do speak to someone that you do disagree with, or we always seem to listen to the loudest voice, and people telling you, oh, you shouldn't listen to this person, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't go to this event. And my pushback is always, well, why not? Like, what is the harm? Why? And when you actually talk to someone from, in my position, from across the aisle, or someone who, when we still every second Saturday head out in my constituency, door knock for a couple hours, just to get the pulse. And I still find it's the best way to connect with people. But it's truly, I like listening to that different perspective and having, because it opens my eyes. I learn things. And then also what, sometimes how I've been portrayed as being possibly, putting on some events that might be deemed a little too controversial. And when I talk to people, and the takeaway is, oh, it was great speaking with you. You're nothing like I expected. And I like that. I guess the takeaway is, talk to people you don't agree with, talk to people you don't know. It's okay to have disagreements. And then you do find out that most people are more aligned, but seem to be there's this polarization that if you don't agree with someone, then you shouldn't talk to them. And I'm going to continue, and I encourage people to try and break down those barriers and just talk to people.
Appreciate it, Eric. Appreciate what you're doing. And once again, June 25th, folks, The Courage to Listen, Building a Framework for a Sovereign Alberta. You can get tickets at thecouragetolisten.ca. As a guy who will be there on stage, handing the baton, as I like to call it, just bouncing between speakers and making sure the night goes as smooth as possible. I look forward to the evening. I hope others will buy tickets and be there, or the viewing parties. Either way, Eric, appreciate you giving me some time this morning. And any final thoughts for the audience tuning in today?
Get your tickets soon. June 25th, thecouragetolisten.ca. It's going to be another packed house, and I look forward to seeing you there, Shaun. And if you can't make it, organize a viewing party or watch by yourself. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric, for hopping on.
Of course.